You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we challenge the status quo of the food industry, celebrate good food founders who are building businesses on their own terms, introduce industry disruptors, and are redefining equitability. If you're ready to build your financial confidence and join the good food revolution to change the way the food industry does business, you are in the right place. I'm the Good Food CFO and your host, Sarah Delavan. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Bree and Michaela Fuller, Seattle natives who have been paving their career paths with a mission to lead a purpose-driven and passion-filled life. The sisters currently own 3 businesses: Fuller Nutri-Fuel, which is a Seattle-based meal prep company, Table and Tines, a full-service catering company, and they co-host the PAVED Podcast. Not only are they super passionate about their brands, but they're equally passionate about self-care, which is at the core of everything they are doing. Bree and Michaela are sharing how they are building their businesses on their own terms. They're also sharing the story of how they transitioned from the bodybuilding world to building a meal prep company, how digging into their financials helped build their financial confidence and set them up to make investments that would support their business vision. They're also talking about the importance of setting boundaries, why making self-care a priority is a must, not an option, and how their vision has expanded and created more opportunities to live their purpose. I am so excited for you to meet the Fuller sisters, so let's get to it. Hi, gals. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having us. We're so
Yeah,
excited to be here.
I'm so excited to talk with both of you today. I feel like this has been a long time coming, and it feels like the perfect time for some reason. So excited to see you both.
I totally agree. So excited to see you too. When you reached out, we were really excited to talk about this topic because both Mick and I are firm believers that everyone has the ability to live a purpose-driven and passion-filled life, and building a business on your own terms is doing exactly that for ourselves. So
I just got chills.
It spoke to us so deeply. We're like, yes, we are so excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to try to set the stage here. There's so many things I want to cover with you both today. The first thing I want to do is talk about the food businesses, and not talk about them deeply, but just tell us, what are the food businesses that you own? And then are there any other businesses that you are also operating in addition to those, just so we can kind of give the full picture of what you've got going on work-wise?
Yeah. So our first business is Fuller Nutri-Fuel. We started that prepackaged, pre-made meal prep company about 6 years ago. And then from that, we started catering as well. And we just rebranded that company to Table and Tines Catering.
Love it.
And then we also have a podcast called the PAVED Podcast. So those are our 3 ventures that we're pursuing right now.
Amazing. So 3 ventures, which is super exciting. And as you know, many people listening who have just a single venture, that alone takes a lot of work. So I'm really excited to talk about what it looks like to do all of those things on your own terms. But before we do that, can you guys fill me in on your history and how you got to this point? Bree, maybe we'll start with you. How did you land in the world of food and food business?
Great question. I never thought that I would be here. Let's start there. I wasn't a cook. I wasn't into any of that. It all started when I was about 20 years old, and I really wanted to make changes with my physique, with my body. And I wanted a personal challenge in my life. I was a little bit lost because I actually didn't end up graduating high school. So I dropped out of high school due to just being extremely bullied, and I was miserable. And so I was in kind of a dark place as an individual, just feeling really lost, not really knowing what direction my life was going to head. In addition to feeling that way, I had a lot of opinions from friends and family members, just like, wow, you're a high school dropout, like you're kind of a POS. And it got to me. I was young. I was still figuring out who I was. So I was listening to the outside noise. So fast forward to a couple years, about 20 years old, I decided to hire a fitness coach and compete in bodybuilding. And through that process of being on an intense workout regimen and an intense diet, I really got to know who I was as an individual because I was sitting with myself. I was reading books. I was figuring out how to push myself past my limits. And in that time, I really figured out what I was passionate about. I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't quite know how. And then I also was just really seeing amazing changes with my physique through proper nutrition. And yes, I was, on these diets to compete in a bodybuilding show. So it was intense, but it wasn't intense the whole time. Like I had to take a lot of steps to get to the point of getting on stage. So I got to see my body go from kind of that, 10 extra pounds of body fat to slowly just making tweaks in my portion sizes. Really, that's how I started, to seeing my body like, wow, I did not realize that I was overeating each meal in my day, and that just portioning out my protein and my carbs would make such a difference. And so I started just becoming so passionate about that because I was feeling so good. I was like, I want everyone to feel this good and to know that it really isn't that complicated. Portion sizes are everything. And so then Mick and I kind of were like, what should we do with this?
So my story is kind of similar. I grew up playing competitive soccer. So sports and being physically active was always something that was really important to me. So I played select soccer throughout high school, and I knew that I didn't want to pursue it through college, but that I've always been coached for my whole entire life. So I was like, how can I hold myself accountable to maintain this level of physicality? And so I also hired a coach and went on the bodybuilding journey, and as well as Bree, totally discovered what it was like to eat properly and just those little tweaks that made your physique so much different. But not only that, is having a very healthy diet and being that dialed in, I felt so crystal clear mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I've never felt like that before, but it was just eating the right way for myself made such a huge difference. And then I always knew that I wanted to do something in the health and fitness realm. I graduated high school and was on my way to go to college. And what I wanted to do in college was pursue health and nutrition avenues. But just like Bree, I had outside opinions telling me, like, keep this as a hobby. This is not a career. Like, you can't make money doing what you want to do. Right. And at first I wanted to be like a health coach, but then going through the bodybuilding process, I realized that I can help people feel as good as I'm feeling through food. And so we merged together, and that's how Fuller Nutri-Fuel was created, was just because we wanted other people to feel as good as we felt eating properly.
I love that. It's so great.
We actually started Fuller Nutri-Fuel just with friends and family. Like when we were competing, we were posting our pictures on Instagram and showing our physique changes and showing the limited meal plan that we were working off of and how we were getting creative with those ingredients, because we could not eat chicken, broccoli, and rice every meal. We're like, how can we make like chicken, broccoli, rice meatballs, or, just getting creative with how the food was presented and the different textures and stuff. And so we started out by just helping neighbors and friends and family, like I mentioned. And then we were approached by an NFL athlete who wanted to partner with us before we even had a business license. Wow. And that's when we were like, oh crap, we have a concept here. Like, people want this service. Yeah. We didn't go into it thinking it would be our reality right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention, at this time, I was 20 and Bree was 23. And so being approached without a business license for this concept that we knew that we wanted to do by someone as big as an NFL athlete with an audience that size, we're like, whoa, this is scary in the best way.
So did you take that person on as a client?
So we were in tons of negotiation back and forth. I got a call from a friend who had connected me with this athlete, and he said, I'm training with this athlete. are you okay with me giving him your info? He's looking for a meal prep company. And we totally faked it till we made it. We were like, we're not going to turn down this meeting, even though we don't have a business license and we're cooking out of our like 1900 kitchen that has like blue laminate countertops and yellow oak cabinets. And so we went to the meeting the next day and they wanted food samples and everything. And we just busted it out, brought it, created labels, put all the ingredients on the label, tried to make it look as legit as possible. And during the meeting, we were open with them about where we were, just so that we didn't get too ahead of ourselves. But we just wanted to get to that meeting.
Yeah.
And so we did negotiate for a while back and forth. We did not end up partnering with them because they essentially wanted to like have us be there. We would be working for them under their name, under their label, under their business. And we were like, that's not why we're starting a business. We don't want to have a boss. We want to be the leader.
And let's just like stop there for a second. So very early on, right? I think there's oftentimes that pull like, oh, this is a chance. Like there's money associated with this thing. And so maybe we take it, maybe we do it. But you guys were like, even then thinking about what do we want? Why would we be doing this? Why would we formalize our business further? Not to work for someone else in that way, but to work for yourselves. It's like very early signs of building a business on your own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. We were on vacation when we were in negotiation and we were very open with them. We're like, we're on vacation for a week. And those boundaries weren't respected. They were calling us. They were expecting us to just be at their beck and call. And we're like, all right, yeah, for sure. No, this is not what we want to do. I think that if we like did have a business license and we were more established when they approached us, we could have had more knowledge to set our like framework and our boundaries around what we would want it to look like. But I think that's a lesson in business ownership too, is you have to really stay level headed when you're approached by big opportunities like that, because you can so easily be taken advantage of by not setting those boundaries and parameters of what you want the partnership to look like.
Yeah, I totally agree. So you've launched this business, you've said no to this particular opportunity. Do you continue on in terms of getting your license and formalizing?
That's actually what lit the fire under our ass. I don't know if I can say that. For us to make Fuller Nutri-Fuel a real official meal prep company.
Yeah.
And so we went into a commercial kitchen, guns a-blazing. We're like, hey, we're ready to sign the lease. He's like,
we're highly sought after. We just got approached by this person. And he's like, back it up. You need this license. You need this permit. Like, do you have any of that? We're like, where do you even find that information? Because 7 years ago, meal prep companies were a fairly new concept. So you couldn't just Google how a meal prep classified. Like there were super blurry lines between like pizza delivery or caterer.
Yeah.
And there wasn't like a specific place to go for that. So he really helped point us in the right direction of where to go to make things legit. And so we took all of his advice and we signed up for the business license, got all the permits, got a commercial kitchen, equipment, and got it going.
History. Yeah.
The rest is history.
So that was about how many years from the like starting point?
I would say, so we competed in 2014 and we quickly like started getting traction with friends and family in 2015. I think we got
the license in 2016. So about a year.
Yeah.
Is when we got our business license after kind of testing the waters, if you will, with friends and family.
Yeah. And what did the first like year or couple of years of operating as a, we'll say, formal business in a kitchen for the first time? I'm presuming it sounds like neither of you had the type of food experience or, you know, industrial kitchen experience that you need typically to go into something like this. So what was that transition like for you? How did it feel in the early days?
Oh my gosh, it was so crazy. I'll never forget walking into the kitchen, which was like a 20,000+ square foot warehouse, essentially, with a bunch of different kitchen stations.
Mm-hmm.
And the lease that we got, because we had other jobs, was the overnight shift. And we
Okay.
didn't have a walkthrough or anything on how to use equipment. And so we're showing up when no one else is there, operating an oven that is a walk-in oven.
Like a rotating oven.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It was huge. And so we were set up in that section because a meal prep company operated there during the day and they left. And so we filled their station at night. And
Yeah.
I will never forget looking at that oven and being like, how in the heck do I use this oven? Like there has to be another oven that we can use.
Yeah. Something that looks more normal, more like what I
Exactly.
have at home. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. And then we were also like, are you allowed to use a dishwashing sponge in a commercial kitchen? Like little things like that were so funny. And then, I mean, there was like a slow gas leak on the stove. So it kind of smelled like propane and we were just thrown into it. And yeah.
You sorted it out though.
Yeah. So what I'll say is we live about an hour away from where this kitchen was. So it was very hard to find commercial kitchen space. We pretty much took the only option that we could find. We fully bootstrapped our company, the two of us. So it took us a second after we went in initially to sign the lease to figure out how we were going to pay for everything and just looking at our personal cash flow and our investments into the business just to make sure that we could sign the lease, pay the first month, last month deposit, still buy our equipment, still buy ingredients for the first round, and then pretty much be month to month is how it started for us. We took a lot of time to just reinvest the money that we were making into the business. So we didn't take any of the cash while we were cooking for friends and family. That is the money that we used essentially to start the business. And that is how we paid for the business licenses and our rent. And then just the equipment, I'm super resourceful. And I am a huge believer that you need to be real with where you are. You don't need to jump ahead. You don't need to go buy brand new items. You need to do what you can do in this moment, and you can always upgrade. And so I jumped onto Craigslist and I found a lady who actually had a similar food business as to what we were starting, and she was closing it. And so she had a storage unit full of sheet pans, rice cooker, Cambrios, knives, cutting boards, all the things, even saran wrap. So
Nice.
we got a really good starting point from her. I'm like, we have $300. What can we get? Here's what we need. We need one pot, one pan, 5 sheet pans.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how the startup process went for us.
I appreciate that so much because I do think that some people approach starting a new business as like, we need all of the things, we need them all now. And, there's just no other way. And, I'm very much a bootstrappy kind of person. It's like, we were talking about working out like offline, you know what I mean? Like my workout clothes have not changed in years. It's like, there's no need, like they are still doing the job of what they are doing. Like we don't need to upgrade. And I take that same sort of approach, like into my business as well. It's like, what will get the job done at the lowest cost possible, and analyzing where do we spend and where do we not spend. But even bigger picture is like you had a budget, right? You just said you had like $300 to spend on supplies. Like knowing that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. We're big into the data analytics. We're like, all right, where are we at? What can we afford? But yeah, I think that it is something to say, like, have a grand vision of what you want your company to be at some point, but don't let that big leap stop you from starting. Like that's where you'll get to, but like, how can you break it down to have those building block steps to just get going and not feel so overwhelmed that you just don't start at all?
Yeah.
Because you always can upgrade.
Yeah, totally.
As you grow.
Yeah. So you're sorting things out in the kitchen. You've got your supplies and things, you're working. You start to find some new customers, I assume, because this business is growing. And then at one point you all reached out to me. What was going on in your business when you started to think like, we want some outside input as far as like what are your finances look like and things like that.
So being a bootstrap company and not paying ourselves and recycling the income in and out of the business for so many years, we didn't know when to almost stop recycling it in so heavily and take some money out for ourselves and owner draws and things like that. And so the way that we looked at our money was in a big lump sum, which is good, but you always want that to continue to grow, but you don't even know where it's actually going, like what categories, what's going to COGS, what's going to operating, what can we take for owner pay, employee pay, etc. We knew all of our bills were paid and we were good with cash flow and all of that, but we just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into our recipe costing and also just the percentages with owner pay and things like that. And so when we came across you, we were so excited because being in the food industry, you want someone else who's in the food industry to do the costing for you because they just get it. And so it was so refreshing sitting down with you and explaining where we were at and what we wanted to do, and just having so much trust that you got it for us, because you focus on the food industry. So we were really excited.
I remember when you came, we had the first meeting, we did the profit assessment for you guys, which is one of my favorite tools. I talk about it a lot here on the podcast. It just gives us such a great overview of what's going on in the business and how you're operating and sort of what tweaks you can make to either improve your financial sustainability and profitability or pay yourself, and really all of the things. And so I remember doing that with you, and it was pretty clear, like two things that stand out in my mind is one, we could improve your cost of goods sold. And if that was possible, the profitability of the company would improve. But then even without that, we could see that there was enough money in the business to start to pay yourselves on a regular basis. So we left that profit assessment with, from what I recall, two very specific goals in mind. And one was, what do dishes really cost you to make? And are we pricing them correctly? Is there anything we need to change or modify? And then number two was essentially putting profit first into place for you guys. And people usually fall into two camps. Either they have money and they're so afraid to let go of it, even if letting go of it to themselves, you know what I mean, is one of the options. And the other is, and I'm generalizing here, but they don't have a lot of money and they're not looking at their budget and they're sort of spending without an eye on what's going on. It was really interesting and really fulfilling to work with both of you through the process.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then another thing that we loved about it too was that we got to see where we could invest in new equipment and things like that. And so just having a clear view of the finances really gave us the confidence to be able to continue to invest into our company to elevate the product and the customer experience so much more as well.
Yeah. Let's dive into it a little bit more because, this is a financial podcast. And I think hearing your experience, like what the feelings before versus how you felt coming out the other side. Because I think we didn't even work together for a full year, which is, I think, important to say. I think our time together was about 6 months. It was heavily focused on recipe costing with then a bit of work on the profit first side of things, which I feel like let's just start there. That's something that you and Mick, you really managed that. You guys have a bit of a divide in how you run the business. So Mick, you do like sort of the financial side of things, right?
Yeah.
And then Bree, you're more the marketing,
inventory, recipe development, keeping an eye on all of the goods, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved that from day one about you guys. It was like very clear, like this is what I am responsible for and this is what you're responsible for. And we stay focused on those things and maintain our responsibility and accountability for that. I'm a huge proponent of like clear accountability and clear roles in a business. But we got to work like setting up your profit first structure and the percentages that you would, allocate your funds into when you were doing it twice a month.
Yep.
And basically we created a calculator for you and you just kind of got to it. How quickly did that have an effect on how you saw the money and how you felt about it?
Seriously, instantly. It was the best thing that we could have ever done. It is so amazing to log into our bank account, even still today, not working with Sarah anymore. I still maintain the same lessons and learnings that I gained from Sarah today. And it just gives you so much more confidence to be able to see the cash runways and see where you're at, how much money you have in operating, how much you have in COGS. And if that gets lower, then you can tweak the percentages. And it's just kind of playing around with it and feeling comfortable to do that. And I think that's something that when we worked with you, we played around with it. So I had confidence in that going off on my own to continue to manage.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seriously was an instant relief and help.
Yeah.
And even though I don't manage the finances, I'm still I'm part owner of the company. So I obviously look at the finances. And one thing that I'll say from my perspective is it's so nice to know how much is in our payroll account. And we know, for example, okay, we have 20 catering jobs this month. So we need to staff those, and seeing what we have for a runway for, extra pay, extra hours. Obviously, we're going to be charging our client that for the catering. So we know that will go into the account in addition to what we have.
Yeah.
But it just gives you so much clarity, confidence, and reassurance that you can do it and that you're not month to month or week to week. And if you are month to month or week to week, then you know that too.
Yeah.
So you're like, we're not going to have money to buy the catering supplies from COGS. We're going to need to use our profit account or whatever.
Yeah. 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 You guys took to it very quickly. And from my own experience, it was like just taking that lump sum of money, as you described, Bree, like, and breaking it out. And it's like, I had done that on a spreadsheet, but doing it in your actual bank accounts just is like light years different. There's just something about it. It's so impactful. You're like, oh, it actually is real money that is there. And if my payroll is, $2,000 a week and I have $8,000 there, then I know how many weeks of payroll I have in advance. And, you mentioned like knowing that you could invest in equipment, that was something we allocated for from the beginning because you had a vision about how you wanted to improve some of your processes, some equipment that you wanted to buy. And so we could say, okay, well, we're going to carve out a certain percentage. And in, 4 months or 6 months down the road, you'll be ready to pull the trigger on that. And then, and beyond that, be able to analyze which machine do I want to buy? How do I want to buy that machine? Right. Because you have a very good understanding of what's going on with your numbers.
Exactly. And I think having a good, clear view on your numbers too, setting financial goals like that and stashing certain money aside with the goal of purchasing this equipment makes it feel that much more real. Like you break it down to the point that it feels like this is attainable. In X amount of weeks, I will be the owner of this machine because I'm taking financial responsibility and putting action to this goal on a bi-weekly basis.
Yeah.
So it just makes your goals feel that much closer to achieving.
Yeah. And again, like we did the profit assessment first. We understood where's the money going now? How do we want to change it? Sort of where could it be going? But we also recognize that perhaps there was room for improvement in pricing the products or, reducing the cost of goods sold. Bree, as the recipe developer, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of how you sort of moved through the process essentially from where you were when we first started and kind of the changes and things that you saw as you went on?
Yeah. So what I want to say to start is when we started our business, we started with a pen and paper. And so we listed all of our ingredients and the cost of the ingredients per supplier that we were using. And so we had a pretty good understanding of our starting point, at least. Did we know exactly how much to charge it to make a profit? Maybe not, but we knew that we were making money off of the meals from day one.
Yeah.
When working with you, we felt pretty good because our accounts were going up. So we knew that we were making money. We just didn't know exactly how much. And that's what we wanted to get clear on. We wanted to know exactly how much one meal cost us, how much 6 portions of this recipe cost us.
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic, because food prices went up so much. And that is really what led us to finding you. Is we were like, we are growing like wildfire right now. Our business is expanding, and we are making the most meals we've ever made. We need to make sure that we're making money off of these meals and that we are moving our pricing with the climate of the world. And so working with you, we started off by just giving you all of our recipes, and you inputted those into a database that you had built out for us, which was so nice because it's kind of like the Profit First. It's like a spreadsheet that you can just see everything. You can see the recipe, you can see how many servings, you can see what ingredients are going into there, and then you can see how much each ingredient in the recipe is costing you. And so something that we figured out quickly with you once we got all of the recipes back was little things like garnishes, like lemon wedges and parsley and cilantro, some cheeses like Parmesan cheese, which is just a teeny sprinkle, really just for that like elevated color. And, you know, obviously it tastes good, but it's not necessary per se. Those ingredients are what was pushing our recipes over the edge to just not be as profitable as they could be. And so throughout the process of working with you, we started getting creative, talking about, okay, it looks like lemon wedges are reasonable. Can we, instead of, you know, using parsley, can we swap it for a lemon wedge? And can you try to cut the lemon wedges in small enough pieces that one lemon is getting you 16 wedges?
Yeah.
So little tweaks like that is what I really started implementing, and just paying attention to our inventory and taking more time when looking at our suppliers to compare our produce. Especially vegetables started going up like crazy. And out of convenience, I was just using one supplier because I'm like, I need to hit the minimum. It's just easier. And then I quickly realized I'm spending way too much money per pound for zucchini or broccoli. And so I inquired with a couple other suppliers. And so now I'm comparing between like 3 to 4 suppliers 2 times a week. So it's a very consistent thing that I'm doing. And I have a pretty good flow because we keep our inventory list really tight. We pretty much order the same exact ingredients per season, and we just make that into different meals. And I think that stems from how we started this business, from working off of a limited meal plan. So that's something that we do. And we just switch up the sauces, and, you know, if the chicken shredded or diced or whole sliced, meatballs, things like that. So I will say I feel so confident about our pricing now. I have awareness to looking at the price per pound. I know that sounds silly, but it is something that kind of sneaks up on you. When you're looking at a case price of zucchini and it's, let's just say $32, you're like, oh, that's reasonable. I can get this many. Oh yeah. But it's like, when you actually look at it, you're like, I'm paying over $2 a pound. Another supplier has it for $1.50 a pound. That is within my goal for my business, for my profit, for my margins, to keep my produce, you know, anywhere from $1 to $1.50 a pound.
I remember that was something we discovered too, was like, whenever your produce went above that $1.50 range, it sort of made it hard with the nice like proteins that you were getting and stuff to hit the margins that we wanted to. So there could be like a seasonal swap, right? As something starts to like price itself out, you pull a different ingredient in, same dish, just like I said, you're sort of swapping it out. I could talk about this topic all day because I am a nerd about it. I mean, it is literally like, it is my work. I've made it my work because I love it so much. But the thing I want to say to sort of wrap this up is that no matter what kind of business you are, I think that when you look at it like a puzzle and you understand like sort of the framework of that puzzle, then you can figure out, where does each element need to be? What do my costs need to be for ingredients and packaging? Where do I need to have my labor costs be as a percentage of income? Once you've sorted that out, okay, now as I grow my revenue, what are the impacts of that going to be on my business? And so I think finances and financials and numbers in general can be so overwhelming. And what we try to do is present them to folks in a way where you can see clearly and just say, I get it. I get why this needs to change. I get why if I change this thing, the outcomes will be better for me. Right. And then you can zero in on the 1 to 2 areas that are going to actually have a really big impact on your finances. And then you're going to feel like $1 million because it's going to all start to make sense and things will start to work more smoothly and better. You'll be more confident, right? You'll like logging into your bank account, as you said, Mick. So I just think it's so important. And I really value working with you guys because it was an absolute joy. You're super involved. And, I said this on your podcast, like a lot of times people are like, we don't want to see anything, just show up to the meeting and like, you tell us. And you guys were like, hey, where are the emails? Where's the communication? we want to know. And I'm like, oh, I love this. I love your energy. It's so great.
Yeah, we definitely came in with energy of knowing exactly what we wanted out of it and knowing that you could really help us get there, but that we wanted to all be on the same page with the accountability just so that we could make it happen because we knew we could implement it, not trying to rush the process, just like, let's implement this and get going.
Yeah.
We know what we're here for.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to note, because we didn't touch on this, before hiring Sarah, we were working with a little bit of a scarcity mindset around money, not because we were financially in a bad place, but just from past programming and being business owners who were just looking at a lump sum of cash, which was a decent amount of money. Like Mick said, we just didn't know where the money was going. So we didn't have that confidence with our foundation, and hiring someone to essentially take a deep dive into all of our finances felt a little bit scary.
Yeah.
It was vulnerable.
Vulnerable for us. It was like a big deal. We're like, oh my gosh, we just feel like, I don't know. It was just a lot of emotions came through. We try to lead our business without emotion in the way of, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And we know that the emotion is there. We're human. It's okay to have emotion, but you can't lead with the emotion. And so a huge growth moment for us was hiring you, because we have been able to work through those financial limiting beliefs that we've had for so long. And now we view our finances so differently, not in that lack of mindset or I wish we had more. It's like, dude, we are good. Like, we have it figured out. Like, our foundation is there. And there's just so much confidence as a founder to be able to look at the finances in a way of seeing it so clearly.
Yeah. I remember when you came to the first meeting and we were like looking at your numbers, you were like, I can't believe we're doing this. I don't remember which one of you said it, but I remember it was like, I'm so like, you were so nervous. You're like, I can't believe it. And I was like, this is a safe place. This is the safest place to just lay it out on the table. And, I don't think anybody cried, but it happens, and people will apologize. I'm like, let it flow. Like, clearly you've been like hanging on to it. Money is a very stressful thing. And, I never set out to be a CFO or a financial consultant for just women, for women only. But I think the way that we approach it and sort of that safe space that we create for people has drawn a lot of women to us. And it's something I now really take pride in and like to celebrate the fact that like you just show up wherever you are at with your mindset, with your dollars in the bank, with whatever you have going on, and we just receive it and move forward. That's what we want to be about.
You made us feel so comfortable. So we thank you so much. You played such a huge role in us overcoming such a limiting mindset around money that, we're just so grateful that we met you and that we hired you.
Amazing. It's so lovely to hear. So you've got a meal prep business that is successful, that is profitable, that is paying you. At which point in that business did you decide to also do catering? Was it a natural progression, like from your existing clients, or was it something you were like, let's also do this?
It was a natural progression. We got approached to do our first catering event, which was a banquet at a high school. And it was to source and supply all of their dessert for their graduation or something for thousands of people. And we're like, okay, we'll do it.
We didn't even own any platters. So we were like, okay, we need to go find platters. We need to figure out our style, how we're going to execute this. But okay, desserts, it couldn't be that hard. I mean, we are a healthy meal prep company. So then going to kind of the polar opposite, desserts that they did not want to be healthy. We're like, okay, I mean, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And we executed it and it was fun and we loved it. And then we were actually out wine tasting, something else that we love doing. And we were at a winery and she was like, you own a food company? Do you cater too? And naturally we're like, yeah, we can do that. And so they turned out to be a really big account for us just out of the gate. And we learned so much throughout that process and opportunity as well. But really, it just kind of fell into our lap and we said yes to opportunities. And that's what got us to where we are today.
And I think it was probably about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think like the tail end of 28. I don't know. Was it 2018?
I think so.
Yeah, I think 2018.
Yeah. What I'm getting a sense of is that you are very open to opportunity, but also very aware of your boundaries. And if the listeners are not following either of you individually, and we'll talk about your social handles at the end of the episode, but like on social, and Fuller Nutri-Fuel, like on Instagram, something that I admire so much about both of you is your focus on rest and taking care of yourselves. And so, I mean, was there ever a point in your businesses where you felt burned out or run ragged or like you were really under the stresses that are so common for founders and people who are running food businesses in particular?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned, the first kitchen that we had was about an hour away from our house, and we were both working full-time jobs. So we were cooking at night. We started at 7 p.m. and we cooked until 2 a.m. And then we're driving 45 minutes home because there's no traffic. So about 45 minutes home. Then we had to unload our car because we didn't have a lot of storage there. So we were hauling in and hauling out equipment.
Wow.
So that's going to bed by about 3 a.m. and then waking up for our job by 7 a.m. At first, we had that adrenaline and that excitement of, oh my gosh, we're doing this. We're making it happen. And so it was okay.
Yeah.
But you let that compound and you're like, crap, why does my chest hurt? Why can't I wake up? What's going on? I have anxiety. And so for me, I actually ended up in the urgent care.
Oh, wow.
One day I was nannying at the time and I told the mom that I was nannying for, I'm like, I'm just not feeling right. I don't know what's going on with me. I just could not get out of my head. And so I didn't know what it was. And I went in and the first thing they asked me is, what do you do for work? And so I was explaining that I had just started a business and that I was a nanny. And he's like, oh my gosh. And so he hooked me up to the EKG just to check my heart because I was having like really bad chest/heart pain. I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
It was anxiety and exhaustion that just kind of compounded on top of each other. And so he told me, go home, get Unisom, sleep for 5 days, and drink Gatorade. You need to hydrate and nourish yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't take any sort of pills, if you will, or any sort of stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I am not doing that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I did because I needed sleep and I just couldn't shut my brain off. And the worry and just anxiety of just doing so much.
Yeah.
I needed a disconnect. I needed something to shut my brain off.
Yeah, I think a shift for us too with starting a business was that prior to starting and running and operating a business, the to-do list was manageable. You could check everything off of your to-do list in a day.
Right.
And where the anxiety and stress really set in was that we had other jobs that we had to perform at. And then from 7 to 2, it's not answering emails. It's not doing any of the back end stuff. It's producing the product.
Yeah.
And so for the first time in our life, we were feeling the stress and pressure of this to-do list is going to roll over to tomorrow, to tomorrow, to tomorrow. And it's just like, when can I get caught up? And so it made us feel really uncomfortable because we are really organized and stay really caught up on all of our stuff. But we just had to learn, I think, just the adult life lesson that your to-do list is going to be bigger than you, probably for the most part, and just get what you can get done and know and trust in yourself that all the tasks will get done at some point. But take care of yourself and remain one of the top 3 priorities yourself so that you don't get to the level of burnout that we were experiencing early on.
So what did you do after you woke up from your 5 days of sleep? Did you implement change, or kind of what did the path look like from there?
Absolutely. I journaled about it too. And I have the journal still. So I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel this feeling again. I never want to feel that. But I think what we did is I talked to the family that I was nannying for. Both of us were nannying at the time. And we just realized we can't, on cook days, like one of us needs to take the day off from nannying, and that's who's prepping. And then the other person is cooking. So we started kind of dividing up, where I would take a day off from nannying and go prep. And then she would take a day off and finish prep. And then together we would cook. So it wasn't like such a long shift. It was more manageable. It was like 3 hours of actual production of the cooking, the cooling, and the packaging at the time. And so we started implementing those systems pretty quickly on in our business because we never wanted to feel the way that we felt again. And we knew that we started the business for the reason of making people feel good. And we were like, how can we lead a company if we're not in alignment ourselves?
That's so big. I think that's so big, because I want to pause, and sorry to interrupt you, but like in the good food space, it's right where people are trying to do good through their food, whether that's the way that they nourish people or, you know, how they're paying people in the supply chain, right? We talk about that a lot here. In this space, it takes so much work. It is really hard. It's a lot of work. And we often find ourselves burned out and exhausted from going so hard. And I think either you have a physical situation, like, right, you had dehydration and exhaustion and anxiety. I had a massive rash on my hand. It was like a huge eczema thing that, like, after I closed my food business and got some acupuncture, it like disappeared in a couple of days. You know what I mean? It was like, so many of us, there's so many stories like that. And my hope through some of these conversations is that we can get people to not hit that point, right? And either recognize it earlier or, you know, think about what are my terms and how do I want to run this business and live my day-to-day life in and outside of the business, so I don't ever get exhausted or burnt out or sick, you know? So I really appreciate the story.
Absolutely. And we all have an intuition. We all know, we hear our warning signs. We hear our body telling us if our food isn't digesting well, if we're not sleeping well, if we're experiencing anxiety. You get those warning signs. It's up to you to choose to listen to those. And if you don't, then you're going to reach burnout. And in my case, I knew I had all of these warning signs, but I had never experienced the amount of responsibility at the time in my life to really know, like, you're going to be set over the edge and you're going to have to take time off to recover from this. And so now when I'm feeling those feelings, I recognize it. And I'm like, my body is telling me right now that my computer needs to close at 2:00 and I will get back to people at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I'm honoring myself today, because that is how my business is going to perform. That is how my business is going to be going in the direction, you know, towards my missions, with my mission statement in mind. And not everyone is going to respect your boundaries. As you said earlier, Mick, like, you know, that NFL player was emailing you and messaging you after you were clear that you were on vacation. And, you know, I've encountered it in my business as well. Someone saying, I need you to be available on the weekends. And that's a boundary for me. That is time for my husband and I to spend together. I was very clear and committed to him when I made that promise. And, you know, there are reasons every once in a while where something is happening out of the control of my client, or, you know, where we need to do a bit of work on the weekend. And those are different stories, but on the day-to-day, week to week, it's a boundary I won't cross, because I think it's a slippery slope when you do it. And we've ended contracts because of that. And you have to just sort of be
okay with it, right? Because they're just not the right people to work with if your boundaries don't line up and they don't work, you know?
And that's a scary step, but something that you have to learn is it's okay to not align with certain clients and cut that relationship off. And we've had to do it too. But I mean, you just, in the beginning stages of your business, you want to say yes, yes, yes to everything, but no is like just as powerful, if not more valuable of an answer than yes sometimes than no.
Yeah.
So
in one little thing that we always say is, if you are filling your space with yes, what are you saying no to?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very clear about that, because sometimes you're saying yes to all of these things and you're saying no to yourself. And that is what you need to be saying yes to.
Yeah.
So having that awareness is key, to take that pause every day. I think twice a day, I think morning and night, and observing how your day went, how you're feeling. And is it in alignment with why you're doing what you're doing? Because we can get so off track just in the doing that we forget to be.
yeah.
And that is where it all begins.
And I don't like the term work-life balance, because I just think that that's something really hard to maintain. And there are certain seasons that require more from you with work than there is with your personal life and things like that. But like Bruce said, I think it is important to check in with yourself morning and night and ask yourself the question, am I at peace? Like, am I at peace with the things that I'm doing? Or do I feel like my life is too consumed with work, so I need to take a pause and go do something for myself? But just taking the pause and not feeling guilty doing that, because I hear too often from entrepreneur friends who are like, I can't take a break. I feel guilty. I feel like I'm going to miss out on something or slip up or things like that. And it's like, actually, it's more valuable to take that rest in that rest day than it is to work yourself into the bone, because then that one rest day is going to turn into a rest week. And that's where it becomes detrimental.
Yeah. And, you know, I remember a point in time, I mean, when I had my first business and my partner was better at stepping away and resting, and I looked at that negatively because I was like, there's so much to do and it all needs to be done. And I felt like I needed to carry the weight, but it's like that was me. Right. Like, and it took a while, you know, after that to go, oh, I did that wrong. You know, if I could go back and do it again, I would do it differently. So this time around, I'm going to do it differently. And, you know, when I founded my consulting business, there were, you know, guidelines from the beginning. It was like, there's a start time and an end time. And that start time is flexible, but that end time is not flexible. There's, you know, the weekend time. So there was boundaries from the beginning, but then they continued to take shape over time, both for me, for the team that has, you know, since grown from it, but also for the clients, because I can perform better. The team can perform better with these certain boundaries and guidelines in place. And so everybody wins. It's not a selfish thing at all, in my opinion, but it definitely takes practice to get used to. So you guys have very much integrated time, flexibility, like into your day, because that is what you need as individuals and what works for you and helps you lead the lives that you are dreaming of while you're running your food businesses. And very recently, a couple months ago, you launched a podcast called the PAVED Podcast, which I was honored to be a guest of not too long ago. What inspired you to create the podcast?
A lot of people struggle to know what their passion is, and they put pressure on themselves. Like, what am I passionate about? Oh my gosh, I can't imagine living a passionate life. I can't imagine being passionate about something. It's really easy to get caught up in
being okay, living a fine life. Like, everything in life is just fine. Your work, how do you like your job? Oh, it's fine. How's your diet? Oh, it's fine. It's like, we want it to be great. We want the life that you're living to be great and feel good for you, because that is how you're showing up into the world.
And as you can hear, we're very into energy, and we know the power that we all hold at like collective energy. If one person is putting good out in the world, how is that going to ripple? And how is that going to just continue to grow our world in such a positive way? And we see that in everyone that we meet. We're like, you have this gift or you have this in you. We can just see what they're talking about that lights them up inside.
Yeah.
And so we're very grateful that we figured out what we're passionate about early on in life. And we wanted to create a platform that can just share stories of people who have found their passion. And we have people that are 20 years old and we have people that are 60 years old. And the timeline of them truly having that click moment of like, this is why I'm here. This is the work that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful because I think we put timelines on ourselves and on our life. Like, oh, I need to be married by 30. I need to have kids. I need, whatever. That's just how our society has programmed us to think.
Yeah.
And we want to break that down. And we want to encourage people to do the inner work, to figure out who they are, why they're here, and to just lead a life that is purposeful and makes an impact.
Yeah, we just really want people to live authentic to themselves. And so with the PAVED podcast, we're able to not only share our knowledge, but have other like-minded entrepreneurs on too. And it's been really interesting to see the commonalities between all the stories. And like Bree mentioned earlier on, is it all comes back to self. And that's what we really realized. And so on the PAVED podcast, that's what you hear a lot of, is just people coming to themselves, gaining that confidence and trust within themselves to go after the things that they want in life, and be okay asking for help along the way and along their journey.
Yeah. I think that what you're doing on the podcast and the way that you're living your lives and sharing it, which I think is so important, transparency in how we're doing things, because it's so important, because, there's a lot of media out there, and particularly in the business space, that's telling you how to run your business, how to grow your business, from what your margin should be to how much money you should be earning in revenue to how many followers you should have on Instagram, right? There are all of these like benchmarks and milestones that are presented, but they're not going to be right for everyone, right? Like there's an author, I was just reading his book. He's very interesting and insightful. He doesn't have a social media account. He doesn't have a website. Right. So it's just like, you can do it on your own terms. You can create community in real life. You can create community in real life and online, right? You can connect with people in a number of different ways, and connecting back to self, especially when we're bombarded with all of this information that may not be right for us. And then being able to say, let me get quiet. Let me either go into nature or sit by the ocean or whatever it is that helps you connect with yourself. And then to think about, what is the life I want to create? What is the business that I want to create? How do those two things work together to not only, create the life that I want, but also the financial reality that I want? How does that part of the puzzle, come into play? And then acting from there. I mean, that's really what we're striving to get people to do. And I'm approaching it on this podcast from a very, financial and business perspective. And you guys are approaching it, from a slightly different angle, but the messages are the same, right? And we want the same type of thing for people. So I hope that our listeners will pop over to your podcast if they haven't yet, because I think it's full of valuable information. And it's just great to hear different people's stories. I mean, there's always so many interesting people on your show.
Thank you. Yeah, we're learning a lot from all of the conversations that we're having, and it feels good to have these deeper conversations with people that are in our network. Like, we know these people. These are people that we have partnerships with their businesses, or we use their services. And to really dig beneath surface level is what's really lighting us up inside, because I think after COVID, everyone has really been craving the community and the connection aspect. And we know that our normal isn't going to be the same normal prior to COVID. I'm seeing how beautiful it is, because I think people are peeling back their layers and they're like, I want to show up as my most authentic version. I'm still a work in progress. I'm not there yet, but I want to have deeper conversations. I want to live a more purposeful life. I want to be intentional about the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm putting in my body, the people that I'm surrounding myself with, the way that I'm speaking to myself as an individual, and just seeing that and really sharing the stories are lighting us up. So
yeah, and COVID was a forced pause that I think was uncomfortable for many. And it made people stop and think, like, do I like what I'm doing? Do I like the trajectory of my life? Should I make a change? And being able to sit in discomfort and process that, and then be able to apply it now with the world going back to its new normal.
Yeah.
And so that's been really cool to see people taking the time to ask themselves the questions, who am I? Like, I'm not my company. I am Michaela. And what does that look like? What lights me up? And how can I apply that to my businesses and my life as well? But it takes sitting with yourself and asking those introspective questions and pondering on the answer.
Yeah. And it's not always some big moment either, right? I think I shared on the podcast, like, before I released episode 49, which was a very different episode of the podcast where I kind of just showed up and was unscripted and just kind of spoke. Like, that was a big, scary thing to do. It was very impulsive in the moment, but then to release it to the world took time for me to go, why do I feel the urge to do this? What is going on? And for me, that was like a shift in, I've always been living, like, working my mission, and feeling and doing what I'm passionate about and what I feel is important, but something has changed. And it was that I had recognized that more needed to be done. And I was being pulled in that direction, and it was so scary. And so it was something that was just privately going on, behind the scenes. And it kind of continues to happen, which is really interesting. And I share that just so, in case there's anyone out there who's like, I'm not having a big, I'm not suffering from giant burnout. I'm not, feeling terrible about where I'm at, but I'm like having a hard time sleeping at night because I've got these things on my mind and I feel like there needs to be a change. It can be quiet or it could be really, really loud. And I remember there's just like a moment where a voice in my head was like, you can either continue on the path that you're on and be fine, which is so funny that you say fine, and regret that you never took this next step, or you can take a chance and like be the person you want to be. And I was like, oh, okay, I have no choice. Got it. I have to go be the person that I want to be.
And I think we're all wired to aspire to continue to grow and evolve as individuals. And at least for speaking for myself, complacency is more uncomfortable than taking that leap, taking that risk to evolve into something that initially makes me feel really uncomfortable. But then after the fact, showing myself that I can do it, I can achieve it, I can continue to work on the craft and continue to be better and better at it.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do. And I find more comfort in that than staying where I am and asking the question, well, I coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to live a shoulda, coulda, woulda life? Or do you want to live a, I did this life?
Yeah.
Like, I am creating this life. I took the scary step forward.
Yeah.
There's no failing in my book. I don't believe in failure, because everything that you do is adding to your life's resume. That is not failure.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of you mentioned earlier, not being afraid to ask for help along the way. And I think that that's huge. For me, I do coffee date Fridays. Like, it's very important for me as a part of my week that I have personal connection with people. So with just friends in my life who I haven't seen for a while, people in the industry where we can talk about what's going on and how are they doing and how are we doing? And listen, if you're one of my friends, we're going deep. Right? Like, we aren't showing up for coffee and just talking about the surface level stuff. Like, we're going deep every time we get together. And it's in those conversations that I can reflect on myself. So sort of like your vacation, for me, it's in talking to certain people where they know that they can reflect what I'm saying back on me. They can ask me difficult questions if they believe that it's going to help open my mind and help me see a situation or something differently. And that is like so critical to being able to run a business, period, I think, for me. And also being able to evolve continually into the person I want to be and the business we want to create and all of those things. So yeah, I think having help, whether it's a coach or friends or a sister or a sibling, that's important. It's hard to do it alone.
I totally agree. And there's something so powerful about putting your thoughts and emotions and what you're going through internally to words and expressing that and getting the feedback that you need to process it, because you can create so much in your mind, but what is actually real? What needs to be filtered out and what do you need to act on?
Yeah.
And if it's just circulating in your brain, it can be really hard to differentiate what needs focus and what needs to just be ditched and move on from.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I love journaling too. And that's something that sort of like will come in waves, right? I'll do it for like 4 or 5 days and then I won't touch it for a while. And sometimes I'll go back to the journal like, oh gosh. And the first thing I'll write is like, it's been 4 weeks since I've been here, but it's because usually there's something going on, right? That's churning. And either I haven't had a chance to talk to someone or, it's just hasn't fully taken form. And even getting it out on the page and being able to see it is just so like clarifying and helpful. So if you don't have a friend or a person, find a journal. That's helpful too.
I totally agree. I love journaling.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back real quick and just touch on how you were talking about like the seeds being planted and just the awareness as to, when you implement those things. So because we're talking about so much energy work and it can sound a little overwhelming to people, like, I don't know where to begin. Like, how do I find this connection to self, or nothing's happening in my life?
Yeah.
Just an example of something that has led us to where we are in regards to the podcast is one, the awareness aspect. So we were getting approached to do charcuterie board workshops where we would teach groups of 40 plus people how to build a charcuterie board. And both Mick and I are like, we are not public speakers. Like we were like freaking out about it.
In school, I would make every excuse possible to not show up to the presentation. And I would just submit my presentation and make up some crazy story so I didn't have to go up in front of the class to do it. Like
Same.
Deep fear.
Oh, I would skip
speaking.
school for like a week.
Oh, wow.
So that the project was over and I couldn't present because it had been a week and it's done with.
Yeah. Oh,
so
wow.
it was little seeds were being planted for us. We knew that we wanted to start a podcast, but we had things that we needed to face before we were ready to get our voices out there and to feel comfortable on a microphone and things like that. So we decided to do the charcuterie board workshops and we did about like 6 of them. The groups kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so at one point we were in front of 50 people at a corporate office for their team bonding event. And I was totally comfortable at that event. Mick was like, I'm having anxiety right now. Are you? I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, okay, I just wanted to tell you that I'm a little nervous so that you knew, but I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to put my emotion on you. And so that was just one thing that was kind of like a seed planted. And then we took one step towards what we wanted to do. We didn't ever think, it's not like we knew what the path was going to be to lead us to starting this podcast. But since we said yes to that charcuterie board workshop and started presenting in front of larger groups of people, it led us to starting the podcast and being comfortable getting our voices out there.
Yeah.
So I just think don't ignore those little signs because they could be stepping stones to get you to where you're trying to go.
Yeah. And I love that despite you being fearful, like very fearful, you were like, yeah, we'll do it, and walking through that fear. Cause I think, it's easy to go, oh, no, I don't do that. We don't do that. Like, here's another person who's great at it, instead of saying, you know what, this scares the hell out of me, but I'm going to give it a shot. And maybe it's terrible. And that's like also okay. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then even if it's terrible, maybe you keep doing it and it keeps getting better and better, but I love the idea of the seeds. Like this podcast exists because of people planting seeds and saying, you should have a podcast. Me being like, what? how am I going to show up and make that interesting? And, enough people saying it that finally made me go, okay, if I was going to do the what if, right? Like if I was going to have a podcast, what would it look like? What would make me want to show up there, weekly or, bi-weekly and to do it. And so those seeds turned into a what if, that what if turned into, oh, maybe I actually like this idea, turned into, all right, we're going to do this, because it then felt like an opportunity to say more and have more of a voice than you can have in a newsletter or an Instagram post or something like that.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about today before we close up? Anything that you feel is important to how you work or how you look at life and work that can add value to our conversation?
I'm giving this advice for a business owner. I think it is so important. Step 1 is to make sure that your finances are under control.
Mm-hmm.
That should not be step 5. Before you start even making money, you should have someone helping you with your finances. That should be what you're investing your money into initially, because you can let years go by and you just don't know where your company is. And it's like, what are you working for if you have no idea where your finances are? Yeah. So in regards to finances, I think that needs to be prioritized. You can invest in that and you will be so happy that you do, because you'll start making money so much faster when you understand your financial situation.
Yeah.
In regards to work and mindset, I think it's really important to carve out time for yourself. There are different seasons of life. Every founder, every business owner experiences the ebbs and the flows of the demand, and then maybe a little bit more of a flow state of mind. We all go through it. Yeah. But even through the busy seasons, make sure that you're checking in with yourself and listen to those warning signs if they come up, and just make sure to figure out something that continues to light you up so that you are not your business. I think it's really important to have a separation between your identity and your business's success or failures or growth or losses. Yeah. You need to maintain that sense of self throughout the process of building your business.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you, Bree.
I totally agree. I just think in everything that you do, strive to have peace within.
That's so beautiful. Well, ladies, it is such a pleasure to know you. It's such a pleasure to get to reconnect with you in this way and on your podcast, and to watch what you're doing in your businesses and in your life. It's really beautiful. I'm so happy to know both of you. Perhaps we'll have you in the community if folks have questions, about any of what we've talked about today. I think that you can certainly act as an inspiration and a point of reference for people. So we'll follow up on that.
Yeah, we would love to.
Cool. Absolutely. Yeah. But overall, I just want to say thank you both so much for this and for sharing your story as far as your business and our work together, and what you're working to do now through the podcast is just really, really awesome. On that note, tell us where people can listen to the podcast and where they can find you on social and other places.
You can find our podcast on Apple and Spotify under PAVED Podcast.
And our meal prep company is Fuller Nutri-Fuel, and our catering company is Table and Times.
Amazing. And I recommend following each of the ladies on Instagram. Lots of inspirational posts and reminders to hop on your bicycle or get outside for a walk, do a little bit of meditation, whatever, kind of helps you get into flow. I sometimes will see it and be like, yeah, let me step away from my electronics now. And so we'll be sure to put the links to their personal socials as well in the show notes. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. It was so great to see you.
For more content and connection with good food founders and industry experts, join us inside the Good Food CFO community. Visit thegoodfoodcfo.com/join to learn more. Thank you, as always, for spending time with us here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share your thoughts with your founder friends and on social, and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. That's the #1 way to help more good food founders find the show. I'll be back with a brand new episode in 2 weeks.